Greetings, Uncle Travelling Matt here, and today it's the end of day 5 of my Bulgaria trip, and I am sitting on the balcony of my hotel in Veliko Turnovo. So we're having a really amazing view from the balcony. Look at that, it's really good. And I've not been showing you that before because I got back too late all the time, and it's been dark by the time I got back, so I filmed inside. But yeah, back today, a much easier day than yesterday. Not as good because yesterday was brilliant, but still a pleasant day nonetheless. So woke up, didn't want to wake up this morning. My God, really did not want to wake up. Knackered from yesterday. Woke up and we were going to go to, well, get some breakfast. And then I noticed, like, the car, there was something wrong with it. There was a funny noise in the back, and so stopped, and there was a flat tyre. Don't know how it got flat, but had to change the tyre, and it was really hot. And you know, I'm not the most practical of people, but I managed to change the tyre. But it was one of those annoying, like, half as wide tyres. Like, they say it's to save space in the boot. I don't believe that. I think the reason they do them, because I've got one at home and it annoys me there as well, is that it's to make sure you don't drive around on the spare for ages, so you get it changed as quick as possible. But anyway, so I did that, and then we went to Arbanasi. Now, Arbanasi I had been before on a school trip like 20 odd years ago, but didn't really know it. It's a village 3 kilometers distant from Veliko Turnovo, and it's where all the elite live. Toto Zhivkov had a bit of a palace up there, now a hotel called the Palace. But yeah, it's like an old pretty village, a bit like Bajenci, but not as pretty, and dotted with like nouveau riche villas, and there's tour groups and stuff. It's very popular, not quite sure why. But anyway, so we went to Arbanasi. On the way up, we went to the St. Nicholas Monastery. It was very pretty, like, when we went in, but the church was shut. So that was that. Then we went in to the main village, parked up in the centre, and went on a walk around. And we went to a preserved house. Now, I can't remember the name of it, but it was Konstantin something. And it was really interesting. It was very Turkish in its style. Like, there weren't chairs, there were beds for people to lounge on and stuff. Much more Turkish in its style than the National Revival House we'd been in Veliko Turnovo a couple of days earlier. And but it was a Christian's house, and so we went on there. It was a bit marred by the fact that there were these tour groups, these American tour groups, and they just made a lot of noise. So it was much harder to concentrate on stuff. But yeah, went around there. Then went further on down the road to a church. We visited, well, I visited 3 churches. Alex visited 4, but after 3 I'd had enough. Three churches in total. Can't remember the name of the first, but it had some. They were all quite similar in the respect that they were very low lying. They looked like farm buildings, and that's because the Turks didn't allow Christians to build high churches. So if you've got a church with a big tower, like that one, you know it is post-Turkish occupation, because they didn't allow them to build high buildings. So they're all low, but inside the painting was amazing. It was a St. George church, actually, and there was a narthex and then the main church, and the paint was amazing, but it wasn't a working church, it was a museum, and some fragments of the frescoes were missing, but it reminded me very much of our experience in the Troodos Mountains, where we went to all those painted churches there. And Alex, who is a bit of a sucker for frescoes, he was in his element. We then went on to a monastery that was, well, I say a monastery, I mean, it was working as a church, but it was, whether there were actually any monks in the monastery, I don't know. But we went to this monastery, and I lit some candles there, and that one, the frescoes were far more complete, and it was nice because it was a working church. But it was divided into 2 halves, and the back half like you could hardly see the frescoes because it was so dark, and because of all the candles, of course. They had to blacken the walls somewhat. So then the final one we went to was a church in the Nativity. Again, tour groups, but this one was the finest. An incredible long low building with an L-shaped narthex and wonderful frescoes. So that was that, but I was just really tired by this time. I just couldn't cope with any more. So whilst Alex went to another church, I went to a cafe, had some homemade elderflower lemonade, elderflower aid, and then read some of my book. And I really appreciated just a bit of time to chill, and that was nice. We had our lunch. We both had shishkembe chorba. Shishkembe chorba is soup, and shishkembe is tripe, and it doesn't sound very nice, but it is, and it's a Bulgarian thing. It's very popular. I remember when I first went to Bulgaria, Eva made me try it. She didn't tell me it was tripe, and I really liked it. It is very tasty, even though the tripe has a strange kind of texture to it. But they put some grated chili flakes on it, and also a kind of garlicky oil stuff in it. But it's very nice. It's very nice. So we had that, and it was the first time Alex had tried it. And then we drove on to a monastery, and it was a monastery of the Holy Trinity. So it was next to a cliff, and it was reached by this very narrow winding lane. Thank God we didn't meet another car coming along, because it could have been lethal. And there were literally no passing places, and we wound in this narrow lane for a long way, and then we got to this monastery, and it was locked, but there was a bell, and we rang it, and this nun came, and we said, "Is it open?" And she said yes. And we were like, I suspect the only visitors all day. But honest to God, once we got through that gateway, it was like you'd entered paradise. It was the most beautiful place ever. Unfortunately, I can't show photos because we weren't allowed to photograph inside, which was really sad. Not just inside the church, but inside the whole monastic complex. And sadly, the nun was a bit grumpy as well, so I didn't have a good chat with her. I asked her how many nuns there were, and she just said how many God sends, or how many God makes. So I suspect it was only her. But I did buy a nice icon of Abraham hosting the three angels, which are God. And of course, that's apt because it seems a precursor of the Trinity. And so that was good. And then Alex wanted to go. Oh no, after that we drove back, and then we went to the Trapezitsa Hill, which is the one we should have gone before, but the funicular wasn't working. Funicular still wasn't working, so we climbed up because it had a bit more energy. And this hill, it reminded me a bit of Berat Fortress. Like, the hill's massively important because it's where Veliko Turnovo began, and it's the earliest settlements on there, and they've, since the end of communism, they've excavated it, which it wasn't before, and there's a museum, weirdly paid for by the president of Azerbaijan, and I've never had a high opinion of him before, but I guess he's done one thing right. And they've tried their best, I think, to present what they have, but there's not actually a lot left. There's loads and loads of churches, but they're all just like an outline on the ground, and there's some with some very fragmented frescoes, but not much. And then there's like a tower, but it's a complete rebuild of the walls. So, but it gives you an idea, and the views were great. So we're glad we went, but it wasn't brilliant. And of course the funicular still wasn't working, which is a bit naff. Now then, after that, Alex wanted to go to another monastery, but I said no. I said, look, we need to get this tyre fixed. So we drove across town to an auto service place and got the tyre changed. It cost 20 leather. And I thought it was going to be like about 50, 60, 70 leather minimum, and it only cost 20 leather. But that means now I am driving around on a car with 4 normal tyres, which is good because you can't go above 80 kilometres otherwise. And we've got driving up to Rusay and beyond tomorrow, so that would have been a problem. Then we went to our final monastery, and I can't remember the name of it. It began with P. I'll put it in the link. But it was on the opposite side of the valley to the Holy Trinity one, and it was you could actually see the Holy Trinity across. It was really quite lovely, but it was looking very ramshackle, but it was amazing. And there was this painted church. It reminded me a bit of the painted church in Romania, because it was very low down and it was painted outside as well as in. It was incredible. A bit like if you've ever heard of the monastery at Humor or Sucevica, the Romanian painted churches. They're very much like them. Now, the guy in it said the church was 14th century and it was repaired in the 19th century. I think it was more likely rebuilt, but it was still an amazing church. And the frescoes inside and outside, it was just something special, but had a nice atmosphere. But he said there was a priest that came, but it wasn't owned by the church anymore. It was owned by, like, this guy lived there, and they were basically doing it up bit by bit. And so some parts of the monastery had been restored, and people were living there, not monks. And then other parts were all still falling down, and they were getting to them. But it was nice. It was just a really nice place, and it was just a really nice place to sit and chill at the end of the day, which is what I did before we drove back into town and had a wonderful meal on a restaurant on the slopes of Turnovo, overlooking the River Yamcha and the gorge, and it was gorgeous, and the meal was good. And England were doing really well in the cricket, so it looks like we might win the test, which would make the series 2-all, and then the Ashes are all to play for. So that's that. This is me, Uncle Travelling Matt, from, I think, the final home, Veliko Turnovo, saying